not, Nell? This is a logbook entry from the 13th of March, 1991. A black lesbian called today. She's moved from Nottingham and is living with a straight white woman in South London. She's 19 and slowly coming out. She'll definitely ring on Monday night to speak to Femi.
You're listening to The Logbooks, untold stories from Britain's LGBTQ+ history, in partnership with Faber Books.
I'm Tash Walker.
And I'm Adam Zmith.
Since we finished making the Logbooks podcast in 2022, we've been writing a book published by Faber. It's called The Logbooks, and Adam's turned 40.
You too!
I don't look it though.
The book goes deeper into Switchboard's archive and other archives, and includes more stories from the 70s, 80s, 90s and noughties. 4 decades.
Listening to queer people's essential stories is always central to our work.
So in this season of the podcast, we want to share some of the interviews we conducted as research for our book.
Now you too can listen to all the amazing, powerfully queer storytellers we've listened to in their own words, with their own voices. Adam, our book is out.
Yes, it's out in the world.
How does it feel?
It feels great. It's amazing. It's like giving birth to something that's got no round edges.
Yes, and also, sorry, I just heard what you said. And also, on that note, I found it incredibly small to hold in my hands.
Oh, right. Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Let's do it A3 next time.
Yeah, love that energy.
Who have we got in this episode, Tash?
Yeah, great question. We've got a really important Switchboard volunteer, Femi Otitoju. We've interviewed her multiple times. The gasp alone says it all.
Exactly.
Do we need to do anything else?
The icon, Femi Otitoju.
But she's brilliant. She's also, not only having been a Switchboard volunteer, she worked at Haringey Council, has done a lot of work when it comes to equality, diversity and inclusion as well. Mm-hmm. So she's a very well-seasoned person, very reflective, lots of very fascinating things to say. We also worked with her on Black and Gay back in the day, the podcast series that we made with Mark Thompson. Listen, if you haven't
it's
already.
It's another Aunt Nell production.
It's available wherever you get your podcast.
And we also included Femi in that pack that we made for teachers who were doing LGBT history lessons.
Yeah.
When we made season 3, we made this pack for teachers as well to go along with it, basically. So Femi was one of the people that we featured in that info pack.
Definitely. And I guess another thing that I've thought about a lot listening back to this episode was one of those questions that we went to people and asked them for the book, which was, how did it feel to be a part of the Logbooks podcast?
Oh wow, meta.
And to have that reflective tone to it. And it made me also think about the sort of evolution of the Logbooks and how it's gone out wider with the book, but also even now we're still meeting new people. And Femi introduced me to another amazing Switchboard volunteer, Andy Picos, who I had recognised from the photos in the archive.
Yeah.
And we speak to actually in a later episode.
Yeah. So for now, let's listen to Femi.
How have you found your involvement in the Logbooks podcast? The process of being a part of that project. How's it felt for you?
At first, I don't think I really understood what I was being part of at all, and I just had this really nice little process where I reflected, and people just listened to me, and that was lovely. And I don't think I really thought about how it would be consumed, but certainly for me, it's done a few things. One is it's kind of recoloured, if you like, my experiences, because if you don't look at them again, then they start to fade, a bit like old-fashioned photographs. So then things have become more vibrant. It's reconnected me with some people who were on Switchboard that I hadn't really seen very much of, so that was nice as well. But I think the biggest thing is it's made me appreciate the impact of the work that we did more, because at the time you're just doing it. Don't really think about it, or you think about the impact that you have on one person or a little group of people at a time. But of course, hearing, and I've listened to like quite a lot of it as well, it makes me realise that it was bigger than just each of those phone calls, bigger than each of just those shifts. It was actually so being part of the process of the logbooks has helped me see the process of Switchboard and the legacy of Switchboard.
Yeah.
More. So that's been quite nice, actually.
Yeah.
And it's springboarded a few other things as well. So I suddenly find that even more people, I'm sure it's you going around going, oh yes, I've interviewed this woman. And then somebody else goes, oh, you need to interview this woman as well. So I think it's nice because I think it is cementing the history a bit more. And so I think fewer people, and for me, I'm always concerned about lesbians, that fewer lesbians will grow up as, say, you did, not really with those gaps, you know. So yeah, it's all good.
Yeah. I mean, that's great to hear. It's really interesting thinking back on, you know, it was just before Switchboard turned 40 that I found these boxes in this crawl space, and we were like, oh, what are they? And let's just start having a look through them. And it had all these photos and all these amazing posters. And, you know, I'd been at Switchboard then at least a year, and I'd known that it was, you know, old. But no one was talking about this sort of legacy that it had and this rich history. And that was kind of crazy, really. But it's interesting because, you know, you sort of reflected on it there, that when you're in Switchboard and you're in the moment, you're there answering those calls, you know, like speaking to the people in the moment right then. You're not really thinking about, I mean, you were at the beginning of the earlier days of that journey. And then I was sort of the latter end, if you like, if we look at where we're at now. It makes me think about memory. And lots of the people that I've spoken to have said, wow, I haven't thought about this for a long, long time, if at all. And it's really interesting to think about that because if you think about memory and the way that we reflect on things, so many of the stories that we're used to telling, we tell and they change, and we're really only retelling it the last time we told it. So it's already changed quite a lot, and how much of it was true. But in this project, I've really felt like a lot of the reflections that people have had have been almost to that direct moment because they haven't necessarily had time or been given an opportunity maybe to go back to those periods in time. I don't know if I know why you joined Switchboard.
Why I joined?
Yeah.
So I've been a feminist, that, as you know, that has always been my thing. So I'd been nearly separatist, not quite, sort of by rather than design. And I had been working in the health service, and it wasn't a good place to be as a black woman, really, a young black woman. So I walked into what was then the Alfred Marks Bureau, it's now Adecco, and said, I'm looking for another job. And the very wonderful woman there said, we've got an empty desk there, do you want to come and do this and be an employment consultant? So, all right. And I had to go to Oxford Street for the head office of Alfred Marks. And I'd never had any reason to go into one of these great big shiny skyscrapers before. And 22 people had been brought from across London to be trained by Alfred Marks to be a recruitment consultant. So there were 20 white women with long hair, one lovely little Greek man, Cypriot man, and me. So eyes across the proverbial room.
Yeah.
And he somehow worked out I was a dyke. I don't know how he did that. He was a gay.
Yeah.
And so he somehow worked out I was a dyke. Next thing I knew, I was on Switchboard.
Wow. Do you remember his name?
Andy Pickos.
I thought it was Andy Pickos. Wow. So, yeah, okay.
It was just fab. So he just said, you should do this. And of course, I'd had a little tiny flirtation with Leslie Lyme before. That hadn't come to anything. I'd worked quite a lot in like women's centres and done a few other bits and pieces. So it wasn't that I was completely green to the idea of working with people.
Yeah. And also within that, you know, sort of, well, oppressed community space.
Yeah, yeah. And I was an activist, you know, I was a feminist and activist and whatever. So that was all fine. Although I say that, I mean, it was probably 20-something, very low number.
Yeah.
So I could see why he'd go, once he'd worked out a way of kind of cooking me in, I could see why he'd go, okay, that'd work.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he just said, why don't you join? And it felt just like a bit of a whirlwind then. And then I met Issa Power quite quickly. We had a thing, very, very brief thing. Switchboard, I always say, it's a bit of a rota for the women. You really just...
kind of pick that up.
Eventually, you just kind of... There weren't very many anyway, so, you know.
Yeah.
And for me, and kind of because I was living it so much, it was kind of like, well, that's where you're going to meet women, so...
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how I ended up on Switchboard. And I just met amongst the most supportive group of men ever.
Had you heard of Switchboard before you joined? Or like through Lesbian Line maybe, or
I knew it was there.
like this thing.
I knew it was there because I think I chose Lesbian Line, and that and that didn't come to anything.
No.
My best mate Helen was on Lesbian Line.
Okay.
So there's a little bundle of them in a photograph in the Tate. Have you been to see Women in Revolt yet?
No, I haven't been to that. No.
Rick?
I know. Yeah, I went to Resistors, which was great at the Barbican, and I need to go to that. Yes, thank you for
So
that.
Pam Mitchell has done a bit.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's how I ended up on Switchboard. And Andy Pickles and I saw him week before last.
Okay.
Yeah, we're still friends.
And you're talking about, you know what? I haven't spoken to Andy.
Oh my giddy aunt.
Yeah.
Andy.
Would he be up for it?
Oh, I'm sure he would. He's a little chat box.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'd love it.
Because when did Andy join in the...
Well, he must have joined
Just
at least a
after-
year before me. So we're looking at, we might potentially be looking at 1981.
Yeah, and his name, I know his name so well. I know his handwriting. So well.
It could actually be 1980. I've got his numbers and everything.
Okay, let me just write. I'm just going to make a note at the end. Helen and Andy.
Oh, and he stayed right in the community because he then started running all these clubs called Asia. Gay clubs that were at the end of Liverpool Road, at the Angel. And then I think he was involved with people and then went on to do the Fallen Angel.
Yeah. So you said that you found the most supportive group of gay men at Switchboard.
Yeah.
And that was like early 80s.
Yeah.
Which is that your first experience of a group of gay men? Had you got many gay men, male friends
I
before?
think Switchboard was my first experience of gay men. I had no friends who were out as gay prior to that. No. Certainly not. I mean, individuals who might have been, but it wasn't part of their identity that I related to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that Switchboard was a wonderful place to be as a woman and as a black woman and as a young woman, but there were individual men, of whom Andy was one, and Michael Derrick, who was the chair for a while, who shaped my ability to do what I do every single working day. That man, he made me. And I don't think he even intended to do it, because I don't think he deliberately kind of sought me out or related to me on a one-to-one basis. But I watched the skills that he used in Switchboard and he gave them to me. And then there's Mark Ennells, who you may have spoken to. He's a partner of Graham McCarry, who you did speak to a lot.
Yeah.
And Mark was the one who rescued me when I thought I might leave because they kept making us do night shifts.
Okay.
I don't know if I spoke about that.
No, you didn't.
So you had to do night shifts, and at first people had to do a night shift by themselves. So you had to do it from 6:30 at night until, from 11 o'clock at night until 8 o'clock in the morning.
Which is such a long shift.
It's a really long shift, and it's always the hard shift, because if someone's feeling really lonely, really down, whatever, that's the time you're going to get it, or it's going to feel most sharp, or at a time when someone hasn't scored somewhere and they've just got back from heaven, or they haven't got back from heaven, they're somewhere and they don't know. All the really tough stuff comes at that time, A. B, you're a woman alone. I was a young woman alone in King's Cross in a mouse-infested garret, right? It was horrid. It was really, really horrid. So I didn't like it. So I would kind of do everything, and you're supposed to do one it might have been one a month.
Yeah, I think it was from memory.
I think it was one a month, and I really didn't like it. So, I used to duck and dive a bit. And then Mark Ennells, the absolutely fantastic Mark, just decided that he would help me do it, that he would come and do these shifts with me, A. B, he'd raid Fortnum's before he came. So he'd had this bag of goodies. Or one time when he couldn't get to Fortnum's and couldn't therefore bring me goodies for the night shift, and I was really disappointed by then because I was expecting them. He took me to Simpsons and Piccadilly. I think it was Simpsons. for breakfast after the night shift so that I would be okay.
Yeah.
Basically. It's him that turned me into a hedonist, I think, really. Or maybe I was latent and he just brought it out in me.
Obviously, it's got to be the latter.
But I remember turning up for that night shift in something like silver and not very much. I was a bit of a tart, really. Not very much, and very, very tight trousers. Did the night shift in this disco outfit and then went to this very swish restaurant in the morning. And I'm sure people thought that, the very very well spoken, very well presented, traditionally dressed Mr. Ennals had picked up some bluesy at a club, taken her out for breakfast in the morning. It wasn't quite breakfast at Tiffany's, but it was a lot of fun.
It's quite intense doing that, isn't it? Like an whole night shift on your own. That they were expecting you to do 9 hours of these really complex calls with no one else, like no debrief, and maybe one after the other the other.
I mean, there was often a bit of an overlap. Well, not always, because often people either had to go to work or whatever, but sometimes there was a little bit of overlap with the person who came to do the morning shift.
Yeah, that's a lot. I'm just thinking about that. And just, the way that the world works now with the amount of support that everyone needs.
Oh, God, lone worker policies.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Debriefs. Yeah. There'd be like co-support working. There'd just be much just like, no, how old are you? Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, you're like 21 years old.
You've done your IST, in-service training session on,
difficult calls.
So there you go. That was an hour and a half, so you'll be fine.
This is Paige DeSorbo from Giggly Squad. Boost Mobile gives you the same network coverage, speed, and service you're used to, just at a more affordable price. Why pay more if you don't have to? Offering reliable nationwide coverage backed by a 30-day money-back guarantee. Love your service or get your money back, no questions asked. Visit your nearest Boost Mobile store or head to boostmobile.com to learn more. After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers who cancel within 30 days of activation will have Boost service fees refunded. Activation fees, if applicable, and phone payments will not be refunded.
Adam and Tash here.
We wanted to tell you about our book.
It's called The Logbooks, Voices of Queer Britain and the Helpline That Listened.
And it's filled with more stories from Switchboard, our podcast contributors, other archives, and even the pair of us.
The Logbooks is published by Faber Books, and you can order it now at linktree.com/thelogbooks. I'm just picking up on something because part of what I've been doing over the last couple of weeks is going back through our sort of logbooks archive that we have. We took loads of photos and catalogued them and pulling out things that we want to include. And the pink pen comes out quite a lot. Femi in pink every time. And it's really nice to see like this part of you, I suppose, this like younger. Yeah, I don't know. It's just so interesting to think about like how old you are when you're writing those entries and it feels like familiar but distant, I suppose, when I'm reading them. And you mentioned it already that Switchboard was, in no way an easy place for a woman, a black woman, black lesbian woman. And a lot of those entries that I found, and one of the things I think it's really important to talk about, and we did this in the podcast, but we'll probably expand on that a bit more, is how Switchboard is a microcosm of wider society, still is today, and how that must have been, how that was really hard for you, and it was hard for lesbians, but also for you as a black lesbian and the only black person in Switchboard.
There was at least one black man at any given time.
Okay.
Usually.
Okay.
So there was Ron Hollis, who was around for quite a while. There's a guy called Dzingari.
Okay.
And there was another Greek man, Kostas.
Yeah. He actually died recently.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
So there were a few others around, but I think for the most part, at the time that I was there, I was the only black woman, and I was young.
Yeah.
That was the other thing. It was the combination of all of those things, which made me. I don't know. I mean, it wasn't. It was. I was aware of it, and there were tussles.
Yeah.
not least about the name of the organisation and things like that.
And I've got those entries I was looking at only the other day, and you telling people very politely the importance of saying hello, lesbian and gay Switchboard, and what impact that will make. And yeah, it was really, really fascinating to read. But you were very polite, but you were very forthright with it and persistent.
Yeah.
Do you remember that time and writing those entries?
I remember the period. I remember the strategy, which was basically, we now call it Find Your Tribe. In those days, we didn't have a little word for it, but it was about lobbying all those individual volunteers and just kind of sounding them out rather than taking on the whole meeting, like the whole AGM, which we did later. But rather than doing that first, it was about sounding out the individuals. And that phrase, worse than the women, finding the men who were worse than the women, like more extreme, more determined to help things go right for us, finding each of those, priming them, then gradually kind of spreading the net a bit further. And that's when we started using the logbook and various training sessions and the like. I think there wasn't too much resistance. There was a lack of understanding.
It does seem like that, reading the entries, like just a sort of ignorance.
Yeah.
But that is quite, loud, the ignorance. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's an important thing to reflect back on. Many people, when they look back in history, so easily glorify it. And you can't do that. You shouldn't do that. You have to own it. And I think that there's some arguments around like the sort of sexist feminist point of some posters that were put up in the phone room that had they were put over some lesbian posters, like maybe something that was advertising like a lesbian night, some penis poster or something on top of it. And that was like 6 or 7 pages in the logbooks, like long essays, which were just amazing to read. And you see men aligning with it, but you also see some people being like, oh, for God's sake, get over yourself. Yeah. There's some really and the language that is used would be, point blank unacceptable in such a public forum today. Yeah. Not that it isn't used elsewhere, but so unashamedly written.
The thing is, it wasn't a public forum. That's the thing about Switchboard. It was part club, part community, part family. And
that's interesting, that part family point where you feel like you can have these inflamed arguments, right?
Yeah, you did. You could get stuck in there. And you couldn't go away. That's the other thing. I mean, people did leave Switchboard, obviously, but there wasn't another one you could go to in the same way. There were these little regional things around the place latterly.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, it was a bit like a family, because if you didn't do this, if you didn't stay here, what else were you going to do?
Yeah.
Where else were you going to go? It's like, so whatever happened, mostly you tried to find your way through it. And it was a really big deal, I think, both for the organisation and probably for the person when someone decides to leave because they're unhappy about what's happening in Switchboard. It was, it wasn't just like moving jobs. It was huge.
Yeah. I remember some other entries that I read recently, which was around one in particular that I remember of a young black woman ringing up a teenager. And it was, and they told them to call back on Tuesday when Femi would be on
Monday,
shift. Yeah, okay. And that's amazing that you were there to be able to speak to them, but that's just one person in an organisation of how many. And the fact that person couldn't, pick up the phone if someone wasn't on shift then who could align with their identity.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that?
Well, that's why we decided in the end to have that regular Monday shift for women. Partly to be supportive of us as women, because it's like you're constantly going in by yourself, being surrounded by men. There'd be the men on the shift with you and men hanging around in the office next door and men making coffee out. Bloody hell. So in the end, we started taking women with us and had that Monday night shift. But it was also good for the callers, because both for the male volunteers and for the callers, because everybody started to know that would work. And then latterly, of course, about black people who identified as black, and that's pretty much what we called it. And then Switchboard, always in its generosity, those men again found the space and said, okay, well, then let's have a line. So when the Black Lesbian and Gay Centre project were looking for space and a phone line and whatever, Switchboard again was supportive, just like they were around AIDS and HIV and the AIDS manual and whatever. You know, they were really good about that. So I didn't feel... I was always used to being the only one, you know. I grew up in Worthing in Sussex. I was the only black kid of my age in that town, as far as I could see, anyway. So, you know, there were some little ones in homes, but I, you know, at 11, 10, 11, I was the only one. So being the only one at school, being the only one at Switchboard, being the only one in the, you know, in various groups, that was my natural state.
Yeah, that was the norm, right?
Right.
Yeah, God.
And in clubs too, sometimes, you know, lesbian clubs are going, and then if there was one other lesbian, everyone, a black one, everyone thought you were going to get off together. They'd all be like watching you in intently to see if, is that going to happen?
And you just mentioned then the Black Lesbian and Gay Centre, and then there was a phone line set up.
Yes, it started at Switchboard.
Yeah, can you tell me a bit more about that?
You know, people were calling, and there was only one or two of us. It was very, very hit and miss. I did a regular shift, so I could be found, and the guys less so. I'm not aware of them doing. You know, they do regular shifts. Yeah, wasn't it? You could always find them on a Wednesday or whatever. Now, the Black Lesbian and Gay Centre project. Initially, there was a woman called Savvy Hensman, Derek Carney. Quite a few others. Sharon Smith was around at the time. Derg Abrisham, I don't know if you found Derg. Yeah. Okay, so these people were fundamental in starting that. There was a feasibility project that was funded by Haringey Council, so they were in a office up for a little while.
When were you working at Haringey?
I was at Haringey, but I wasn't part of that group.
Okay.
So that was they were a voluntary sector project. I was actually a local government officer. So it was slightly different. But Savvy was instrumental in setting up the lesbian and gay unit in Haringey as well. She's a very active member of the local community. So Switchboard basically got an extra phone line put in one of the downstairs offices, and one night a week that was staffed by black lesbians and gay men, specifically, completely discreet from Switchboard.
Were they Switchboard volunteers?
No,
they weren't. Okay. And did you guys train them? Or did they have training from Switchboard?
Do you know, I think we didn't train them in the truest sense, like in that we put a programme there for them. I don't have a recollection of that. Well, we were supportive of them, so we probably did something.
Yeah, because what I can find is stuff saying Switchboard, kind of what you've said here, helped to establish the Black Lesbian and Gay Helpline, I think it was called. But that's it.
Yeah, that was really it.
Because,
you know,
and then it was in Houseman's, and then it moved.
It wasn't in Houseman's. No.
Oh, so this was
the phone room was right at the very top.
Oh yeah,
and then there was an office in the middle.
So Peace House, in the middle.
Peace House, yeah, that's right. So they that was what we used to call meeting room. There were two meeting rooms.
Right, gotcha.
So it was in one of those that their phone line was put in, and you know, it's quite interesting now because I'm looking back and I'm remembering Switchboard as being nicer than it was. Or than it felt at the time. But we didn't interfere. We wouldn't have dared, I don't think, have said, you must go through our training if we're going to support you or whatever. So I think that's probably all there was to find.
Yeah.
You know, do you want to do this? Oh, you do want to do it? All the phones in there. Like,
here you go.
Are you all right? Tea's up there, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure every single volunteer would have been supportive if anyone downstairs had needed anything. But also not arrogant enough to say, well, if you're going to run a phone line, we need to
definitely
all the way through that. We didn't do that.
Do you know what the purpose of that helpline was? Was it?
It was to be a source of support to those who identified as lesbian and gay, who also identified as black. People who were descended through one or both parents from the indigenous peoples of, and then you go through America, the Caribbean, and Australasia, and just basically like that. So we're basically saying, and the Indian subcontinent and the islands of the Pacific. You know, there was that really long definition that we used as black. Now people say black and brown people to try and recognise the different lived experience. But at the time we were like, we're all facing this shit, right? If you show, you're in. Yeah, basically.
Do you know what happened to the helpline?
Well, it became, then there was a feasibility project for the Black Lesbian and Gay Centre project. And so then the helpline, they then set up a helpline.
Okay.
And so then,
Yeah, then the rest is their history.
Yeah.
I love listening to Femi. It's just another one of those interviews, another one of those people that you could listen to for hours and just like have chat with her over tea for hours.
And always learn so much.
Exactly. I mean, just even there, as she's saying about the all those projects, the Black and Lesbian Gay Centre project, all those projects, it just makes me think of now, like, there are different forms now. Like, often there are like Instagram accounts or like other kind of support groups and projects in the community. And it just makes me think, like, always through time, it seems like different parts of the queer community are like getting together to support each other and build things and make things happen.
Yeah, and another version of that is actually the Switchboard play, which came out of the work that we did. And I was talking to the people who made it. It's about the lesbians at Switchboard in the 80s and how they answered calls and did lots of other things. Anyway, I went to see an early version of it with Femi and also Andy, who we'll hear in our next episode, her friend who she linked me up with. And they were outrageous. They were heckling. That wasn't like that in my day. Or that was my joke. Or I'm not sure if that's quite right.
Did
it
they
was actually
like
amazing.
the play?
Yeah, I think they did like
so
the play.
So they were badly behaved, but they were like...
which is a very classic Switchboard volunteer thing. Yeah. The sass is alive.
So what was that play called? The Switchboard Project?
It's called the Switchboard Project. Yeah, that's right.
Great. I think the thing with that play is that it is another one of those things of like younger people listening to the elders who are not even particularly that old, but just different generations, and then making work with it, which is just what the podcast that we did and obviously what the book is as well. And that's what we're trying to do this year by bringing people together for these workshops and events and sharing days that Aunt Nell is doing to try to get people listening to each other's stories across the age gaps, basically, in the queer community.
Yeah, totally. So find out all of the events that are upcoming via our Linktree,
which is linktree.com/thelogbooks.
Thank you, Adam. I always forget it. /forward, backwards. But also, this podcast has been made in partnership with Faber Books. So do check out Faber members. It's a Faber Books free to join programme of events and online content.
The Logbooks is an Aunt Nell production in partnership with Faber Books.
It is hosted and produced by Tash Walker and Adam Zmith.
The voice of the Logbooks is Serena James.
The assistant producer is Marnie Woodmeade.
Engineered by David Pye.
Music by Tom Foskett-Barnes.
Original artwork by Natalie Doto.
Thanks to Steph Dickers and team at the Bishopsgate Institute.
Our publisher, Faber Books.
The dreamboats at Acast.
The staff and volunteers at Switchboard, and all the contributors who shared their stories.
Switchboard continues to take phone calls from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day. If you're affected by any of the issues in this podcast or need to discuss anything to do with your gender identity or sexuality, you can call Switchboard on 0800 0119 100. Email hello@switchboard.lgbt or instant message via switchboard.lgbt, where you can also donate money or time to help.